Hey there, listeners. It's Shane.
And Ishan, your hosts from the Total Party Thrill podcast, the newest addition to the Don't Split the Podcast network.
We talk topics that help you, dear listener, create and play better RPG games.
We have a back catalog of more than 150 weekly episodes.
And we got nominated for an Emmy for episode 11, Social Contracts.
In episode 154, we talked about crossing the moral event horizon. How evil is too evil?
We also recap our home games, like the 40k Rogue Trader campaign, Dynasty Unwarranted.
But that's mainly just you trying to kill us all. In your defense, our characters are greedy idiots.
Don't forget the 3 years we spent in Eberron playing Morning Glory, your 5th edition D&D campaign.
We also review new RPGs and books, and every episode we build a 5th edition D&D character in the Character Creation Forge.
You might check out the Pint-Sized Punisher from episode 119, a halfling with a bad attitude, and 14 levels of Barbarian.
So to recap, Total Party Thrill, RPG advice, campaign recaps, and D&D characters built by your dashing hosts every single week.
What more could you possibly want?
To get back to the actual show?
Oh yeah, let me just hit this button, and here you go.
This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Intricasso. Today on the show, I've got a DM's Guild creator and podcaster, Matthew Whitby, with me. I had the chance to be on his podcast, and he is just one of the most brilliant people ever, and it was a really fun time talking with him. So here is my interview with Matthew Whitby. Okay, everybody, now I am here with an amazing game designer and someone who I have come to really appreciate in these last few months. Matthew, welcome to Tabletop Babble. For people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Oh, no. Well, first, thank you so much for inviting me, James. This is an absolute pleasure and an honor. I'm Matthew Whitby. I have been on the DM's Guild for coming up to my first year. So I think I hit my first year in April, and since then I'm sort of predominantly an adventure writer, and I've just gone all out in joining in a bunch of collaborations. I think some of the stuff that I'm most proud of is I did a adventure for the Adventures in Chronomancy, which was a sort of being able to dabble in time travel and all that fun stuff was always fun to write. And more recently, what is it? So on the 6th of April, which I've released Bolo's Guide to Getting Murdered, which is a murder mystery involving the one and only Bolo, which I'm so happy to get that out because that was a joy to work on. So yeah, that's roughly who I am, I think.
That's very cool. So, take me back, Matthew. When did you first lay hands on a tabletop role-playing game? What was the game? Were you a player? Were you the game master? How did it all go down?
So I got my introduction to tabletop RPGs mostly with D&D, and that was at the sort of start of 5th edition, where one of my friends sort of gathered around his house to sort of play D&D. And it was his elder brother Lewis who sort of DM'd for us, and that's kind of how it started. And I think actually was it. So I recently went through my sort of garage of like all my old stuff that I have at my parents, and I discovered the D&D board game. So like one of like the earlier edition D&D board games that you sort of like takes the D&D rules but sort of like makes it a little bit more accessible. And I was like, oh, dude, I remember playing that game by myself. So I think that was essentially like my gateway in is this game by myself, and then being able to play like 5th edition with friends, and yeah, it sort of took off from there. I never really got into like a weekly game until I've moved. I started my PhD, so about 2 years ago, and that's when I started going to Adventure League. I started DMing for like a weekly group with all my other sort of friends, and now I'm in another game as well. My first ever experience of Spelljammer, which I'm enjoying tremendously. So yeah, a little bit over the place.
Yeah, you've really, especially like you said, in the last year, you've really dove in to the Dungeons and Dragons scene, especially the scene among creators of the DM's Guild. So you also, you talk to people on a show.
You started a show in addition to getting into creating and in addition to playing a bunch. I'm always curious about this. What possessed you to take this leap into doing this, so frequently and being such a part of the community?
So I think, funnily enough, I think it was like so there's the amazing DM Guild Creator Circle Discord channel, which I managed to sort of get a part in before the Facebook group fell apart. Rest in peace. I was starting to sort of chat with all the creators, and was a bunch of people sort of pointed me towards Travis Legg. Travis was doing like sort of weekly podcast where he was bringing other creators on, and through running out of time, it's something that he stopped doing, and a lot of the creators were sort of saying, "Oh, it would be nice if we had that again." And I have a microphone. I went out and bought like a slightly better webcam, and I was like, you know what, I can talk to people. I think I can manage that much. And yeah, it's been amazing, because the way I kind of treat each podcast is I want to find out interesting stuff from creators, and I'm learning, and I'm hoping that at the very least, if I'm learning something, then the people who listen might learn something too.
Yeah. It's very cool that you saw this need and you were like, I want a way to help creators and also learn stuff myself. I think it's just fun and fascinating. What do you think you have learned from doing your chats with people so far?
If anything, it's confirmed to me how great a lot of the creators in our community are, which is always lovely. I feel like there's something I learn every week, and sometimes it's like it's nice to get some of the more like nitty gritty sort of like designer tips of how people approach design issues, or and I think it's ways that you don't necessarily always think about, because obviously everyone comes at a adventure or product from like a different angle. I think that's the main thing. I'm curious. I'm trying not to put my podcast host hat on too much.
Oh, sure.
What like to throw it back at you? What was the sort of like your inspiration for them starting the Tabletop Babble?
So Tabletop Babble, it comes from a show called The Round Table that was on a podcast network that's still around called the Tome Show Network, and it's great, and everybody should go listen to it. And essentially, I saw it was during the 5th edition playtest, the D&D Next playtest, and I wanted more content, right? Similar to you, right? Like I was like, I want to be able to listen to more, and I kept saying that, and then I said, oh, I know how to do this. Maybe I should be the one who gives more. Maybe more people want it, right? And so it started like that. And then I approached Jeff, who runs the Tome Show, for advice. And he asked me to come on the network and do it. And that's sort of how Tabletop Babble has sprung from that then. And it's hard to believe that there weren't a lot of podcasts and RPG chat shows 6 years ago when it started.
Yeah, I can imagine you've seen the whole sort of landscape change significantly.
Yeah, I definitely have, and that's why it's great to be able to talk with people like you who are coming in fresh faced on the scene and really doing amazing creative things. Because I also
budding.
Yeah, talk to me a little bit about your approach to making products, because you said you've got this adventure that recently came out that's all about solving a murder mystery involving one of a character that many of us would never dare kill off. And I think it's super fun and amazing that you're doing that. So talk to me about how you get ideas for stuff.
So the funny enough, talking about Volo's Guide to Getting Murdered, is funny enough, the idea stemmed from one of my podcasts. We were talking about how I was speaking with RP Davis, who mentioned that one of the advantages of writing on the DMs Guild is we get the Wizards IP. We have the entire Sword Coast, or the Forgotten Realms as our playground, and you really should be doing your most to sort of take the IP and work with it. So I was like, we should just be taking these iconic characters that everyone loves. and you don't necessarily get to see outside of the core adventure books. And I was like, well, what if you just take Volo and let's kill him? And yeah, that was kind of the inspiration behind that. And with some of the other stuff that I've kind of been writing, I guess it's that's something that I've pivoted towards in everything that I've been writing. Is like, okay, well, before I was kind of like thinking of like, oh, I want this to be kind of as not setting agnostic, but then when I kind of started, I was like, oh, I want something that you can sort of pick up and place anywhere. But as I've sort of been writing more and more, it's like, well, maybe lean in, to one of the benefits of the DM's Guild, which is this incredible lore of history of IP and characters.
It's a really great thing that we have going on with the DM's Guild, and I think I love to see when people are using it that way, of taking famous iconic characters and saying this person is dead, or here's stats for this person because you're going to fight them, you're going to fight Volo in this adventure, or whatever it is, right? And I think that's super, super fun. Talk to me about some of your past products. What do you have that you're really excited about, including your most recent product?
What is it? One of the ones that I kind of put like a fair chunk of work in, and I had the support of Ryan Langer, Adam Hancock, and Jimmy. We did the Runa and Ulfgar's compendium of big boss epic goblins. So there's 16 goblins, all sort of like stat blocked up. And the idea was it was essentially for people who like goblins, because most people love goblins, but you kind of only get the goblin experience mostly around like tier 1. And we're like, well, what if we started introducing some tier 3s and tier 4 goblins? And yeah, so rather than just sort of keep it as just a sort of bestiary with a bunch of like stat blocks, we've kind of dug deep into like the lore of each of these characters and giving as many sort of adventure hooks as possible. And so yeah, so these, I think, what was it? So we have like the Bohoblin, which is like a mixture of a beholder and a goblin. I think his name is a Gobbleflar. Yeah. And then there's one of my favorite ones was one that I got to write, which was Grick the Many. And it's the idea of this little goblin that has like a ring that sort of duplicates itself. And so Grick the Many there's one of them, but they're surrounded by goblin swarms of Gricks. Essentially, so rather than just fight a single goblin, there's hundreds. So that was a very sort of a fun project, and yeah, and then I also I got to work with JVC Parry on the Struggles of Stelmane, which was a very interesting project. I liked the that was actually my first sort of experience trying to create a project that aligns with the Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. So I took the basically I think that's kind of my writing style is when I sort of try and make notes is I look at the official products and I see where there's sort of gaps. So in this Descent into Avernus, Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus, there's a nice little story hook saying how was it Duke Stelmane, one of the 4 dukes of Baldur's Gate, is having some problems related to being attacked by a mind flayer ages ago. And I was like, well, that seems like I can play around in that space. And yeah, then I sort of ran away and sort of wrote that adventure. And then thankfully, because I was still tentatively quite early in my writing, JVC Parry was kind of acted as like a producer to sort of guide me through that experience.
That's very cool. And one of the things that I think is great about the guild community is you often see creators giving a hand up to each other. Particularly creators who maybe have been there a while creating stuff are more than willing to work with new creators and say like, hey, here's how I put this together. Here's how this whole thing comes about. And I just think that that's a great thing to see, creators supporting each other, especially when it could easily be a you're my competition kind of thing, and it's not at all. How have you found the community to be so far as like welcoming and for new people to navigate? How have you found
it? I think with every as it sort of continues to sort of blossom and grow, I think it's so nice to sort of see sort of more established creators do everything they can to sort of bring in new people. So I mean, you have to look further than the RPG Writers Workshop, or the efforts of like huge collaborations that sort of emphasize saying I want first-time writers to sort of jump on board. And I think when I joined, I think everyone kind of in the community, everyone welcomed me. It was kind of amazing. And second, they kind of pushed towards collaborations, which I think I feel like I maybe dipped into almost too many collaborations where you're trying to juggle so many projects, but each one has sort of been amazing, and you learn from each one, and you make connections each one, and you sort of you end up with a combination of work colleagues, even though it's like a hobby, but it's like and friends. It's kind of that combination of both, because they're people that you contact regularly. So to sort of go back to your question, I felt incredibly welcomed, and I think it's just a good community. I think that, and that's why I feel like the kind of urge to do my podcast and to try and give back where I can.
Do you, if you were to give some advice to someone who has never created anything before and is thinking about getting involved in creation in general in RPGs, right? Be it the DM's Guild or putting something on drive-through or itch, wherever, what advice would you have for them?
So first one, get an editor. I think. I think as well. I mean, like I feel every that's kind of like an underlining one, where like I've learned something from every editor I've had, and they've helped me improve as a writer. And second, I think don't be afraid to just put things out there and put a price to it. I think I've heard that a lot of creators, when they come to their first product, they feel the urge to sort of their first product to be pay what you want, which is sort of understandable, just to sort of step in. But some people are doing this with projects they've worked on for like months, or they've dedicated a large amount of time to this. And it's scary to take that jump to be like, no, I want people to, I'm accrediting this value to this product. And think of it this way: if you have an editor on the project, that's already increased the price, the value of the product already.
Hey, everybody, wanted to take a quick break to let you know that this episode is brought to you by our friends at Hero Forge. Hero Forge offers fully customizable tabletop miniatures with dozens of fantasy races and thousands of parts to choose from. Their easy-to-use tool lets you build the perfect miniature online using a fully 3D in-depth character creator right in your web browser. Hero Forge offers custom minis in a variety of materials, including plastic and metal options. They also offer downloadable model files for users with 3D printers, so you can 3D print your own unique design at home. Hero Forge is constantly expanding the catalog of customization options. They're always adding new parts every single week and major features like new races and custom posing on a regular basis. Visit HeroForge.com to start designing your miniature today, and check back often. New content is added every single week. Let's get back to the babble. In the spirit of having bold and fun ideas, you have, in your collaborations, you've worked on a lot of fun and awesome ideas. Most recently, one might say Unbridled was a giant collaboration that you were part of.
It was I just when you just see an opportunity and you're just like, you know what, I'm gonna hitch myself to this. And I've had the pleasure to work with Oliver before, and the way he writes on Twitter is the same way he writes emails, which makes every inbox just absolutely fascinating. And yeah, I've done bits and bobs of stand up in the past, so being able to sort of integrate a little bit of like comedy into my D&D was like an interesting challenge. I think I went with my adventure is called The Freakiest of Fridays. So it's just think Freaky Friday, just with a hag and a unicorn swapping, and the rest of the adventure sort of unfolds from there.
Excellent. That's super fun. And so Unbridled, for listeners who don't know, is this collection of adventures put together by Oliver Clegg, who is a very prolific, creative, funny creator on the DMs Guild. Unbridled is all about hags, adventures involving hags and unicorns and hags riding unicorns, and very, very fun stuff.
I think what was it? The inspiration behind it was I think we call it a throwaway tweet from Jeremy Crawford that I think was it both yourself and Oliver both had ideas because you ended up with what hag amalgams.
Yes, I put together hag amalgams as well, and sort of independently, because I mean, when the lead designer of 5th edition tweets about things he'd like to see more of, right, people are going to create that thing. And so that was really fun. And mine is it's a small collection of like 6 creatures. This is a massive, impressive tome that has a lot going on.
Yeah, I believe there's 19 adventures in there.
Yeah. So it's fun stuff. People should definitely check out Unbridled. But when you mentioned the humor, right? Humor can be hard to get into an adventure, especially because like you don't know who is going to be running it. You don't know who's going to be playing it. How do you recommend people get humor into their adventures? And your career as a stand-up probably helped you out here.
I think I think most D&D players kind of bring the humor to the table anyway. I think every group kind of has the bard with the drums every given encounter, or and I think the best thing you can sort of do is not necessarily write beat for beat comedy, but just give the sort of the scenarios where comedy can arise. I guess like the idea of like, you don't need to say bit by bit everything that happens, but if you put a shop where everything is very expensive and delicate, and then you say in 3 minutes a goblin is going to fall into the room, and it's you put in a situation where the players have to act, but then even if it's like so mundane, there's comedy to sort of be had, and that's kind of what I try to do with the Freakiest of Fridays.
Sure, yeah. Set up the situation and then let the humor come from that, right? That's really, really fun stuff. You've mentioned a couple times grad school. Do you mind if I ask what you're working on in grad school?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently I'm at university in the UK. In case you can tell, I'm British.
What? Impeccable. Your American accent, you blend right in.
Years of practice. But no, so I'm doing my PhD, and I'm studying. Well, technically, it's the easiest way to describe it is I'm doing a PhD in video games. So my course that I'm on is called IGGI, which is Intelligent Games, Gaming Intelligence, and my current pending thesis title, because it will change 100 times before I finish, is I'm exploring how games challenge people's perspectives and things. And yeah, so that's kind of what I'm doing. So I'm taking games and sort of seeing how people have perceptions before and how they alter through playing the game. And then by the end of my PhD, touch wood that everything goes according to plan, I'll be developing tools to sort of help developers integrate these sort of moments into games.
That was a lead up to this question, and I didn't know that you were doing things with gaming. That's really cool. So how does what you are doing, what you are working on in your graduate program, help you when you are creating adventures and creating other gaming content as well?
In fairness, I think if anything, it's it just gives me because so prior to that, I did a game development course and sort of messed around with developing games. So that's kind of the background that I come from, and it kind of gives me quite a good analytical mind for mechanics and systems and stories in games, and that's why one of the the sort of driving force that always helps me is remembering the medium that I'm working with. And obviously being a tabletop RPGs or games it is, so much of it needs to focus around player agency and letting the player do things. It's harder in tabletop RPGs because again there's no ceiling in the same way that the players can do anything at any given moment. But it's the idea of when I'm trying to write adventures and stuff like that, giving the my writing sort of enough freedom that the DM or the players can still have their agency and don't feel that sort of, not again, to use railroading as like, the go-to term of, how to feel.
Sure. I think we struggle with that sometimes as adventure designers, because it's like, well, we have this cool scene, right? And there's going to be, an avatar of Tiamat is going to be on spinning plates above lava, and there's imps flying around, right? All that kind of stuff. And we worry like people will miss the cool thing I wrote if we don't give them very strict railroads to get to where they need to go. And I again would ask you, like, how do you recommend people go about thinking about their adventures and designing their adventures so that they don't end up in a place where it's like one railroad ride to a cool battle that then they have to fight their way through?
Yeah, the universal question. No, I think that there's small things that you can do, and I guess that is to be flexible in the way you write, to again not assume anything where possible. What the Essential Kit did really well was the idea that obviously you could the white dragon sort of, as it flies around, you can counter at any point. And that's something that I've kind of leaned towards is like you can almost write parts of your adventure as almost as if they're modular, if possible. And even though you have like, the story beats you want to hit, you can have those as encounters that can slot. You have your location that is in itself interesting to explore, because, we're in a D&D world. You want to, everyone's gone through a basement, or which is something that I what actually was it? So with the struggles of Stelmane, that does end in a basement fight, but I'm learning, and what you can sort of do is okay, well, if you want to have this big climax at the end and stuff like that, just make it so that the events that happen in the climax can be placed anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. I think about it a lot because I think there are lots of RPG systems, like Gumshoe, for instance, which is all about detective mysteries, right? And like, it's kind of one of the ways that they go about things is like, this is where the end happens, right? At some point, the players are going to figure this thing out, and they're going to have to go here, right? Or they're going to have to face this person to confront them because they are the perpetrator of the murder or whatever it is. But and then their adventures are written like a bunch of scenes, and it's like, here's where a bunch of different clues are that could lead back to this place, and maybe they'll go here and maybe they won't, right? And as a result, they write pretty, I would say, broadly and sparingly, because you don't want to spend a lot of time on a location that no players may go to, right? And so it's like giving sort of just the facts and that kind of thing. I really think people benefit, designers benefit, when we read other games and see how they're structured, even if you're just designing for one game.
I think as well, to sort of like build on, I think it's interesting as well, because when writing, at least writing for the DM's Guild, when it comes to writing adventure, it is very hard to sort of know the type of DM you're writing for, because you are essentially writing for every DM. And whereas, some of us are like meticulous note takers and they want to know, everything. Some people are just the case of like, they'll enter a room and I'll put some monsters in there. And being able to sort of write an adventure that has, I think what I try to do is leaning back to like the idea of things being modular. I am perfectly happy with, DMs coming in and just tearing my adventure apart. And taking the parts that they need and stuff, because I think at the end of the day, I think we all kind of want our adventure in whatever Frankenstein part way to be used. And that's kind of my takeaway, is like, I as long as each adventure I write, as long as it has something that someone can use, then yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, I think a lot about when we are working on our stuff, right? Like how if you watch Chris Perkins run an adventure that he has written or was the design lead on, he does not stick to the book. He goes off, he does things based on the actions of his players and that kind of thing. And I think about that a lot when I write adventures, because I think I don't want to tell you how you have to run the adventure, right? I want to give you the adventure and see where things go from there. Yeah, I think that's really, really great advice. You have risen very quickly in the world of the DMs Guild with very, very good cause. The products and things that you are making are great. You are a great person who is kind, and I imagine great to work with. Hopefully I'll find out one day myself.
I'm the absolute demon. I'm the worst to work with.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it, sir.
I have a certain amount of charisma that I use for podcast appearances. And then once we go off live,
That's right. You're just sending severed fingers to people when they don't get you their copy on time. It is really very great to see someone who has such talent and commitment and who works hard have like this meteoric rise. How do you think you have gone about finding such quick success in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
See, I think it's always interesting of like what people like, not to get too meta, but like what people define as success. And I think for me, I'm very happy sort of seeing like the quality of my products improve over time. I think everyone's the same of like, if you were to go back and see like Craven Hall, which is my first product that I saw push live, it's a case of like I feel the urge to go back and improve it and like and give it the same treatment I would with one of my new products. But in the same way that one of the feedback I gave is just put things out there, because I think by just getting things in front of people, you build your catalog of adventures, and each project I've learned something. And I think, I think I sort of can continue to learn. And I think when what I can attribute, being involved in so many amazing sort of kind of collaborations is that willingness to put yourself out there and to sort of say that I think I'm kind of right at this, and I think as much as possible, being polite, being enjoyable to work with. It invites you to be collaborating more things, and that sort of snowballs. And next thing you know, you're drowning in projects, but in the nicest way. It's. But yeah, so I hope I've answered your question. I feel like I went on the tangent there.
Yeah, I think you definitely have. And I guess the other thing you've mentioned a couple times, having a lot of work, too much work, drowning in projects. How do you balance, and how are you finding balancing DM's Guild work along with working, doing your graduate work and all that kind of stuff? We are talking right now in the time of the coronavirus, so things are a little different for everybody. But in general, how do you?
Yeah, I think it's a case of as I've worked on more, I think it was a case of I was trying to get involved in collaborations for because one, I was interested in the project and sort of getting involved. And I think as I now have more sort of projects under my belt, it's kind of like learning which projects I am very passionate about joining, and then I also have the sort of time to join. I think so. I think what I'm discovering right now is the amount of stuff that I'm taking part at this one moment in time. There's been a lot of projects that have sort of begun to overlap, which before I was quite rigorous in saying I have a me project, which is like something that I'm involved in, and then I sort of have a collaboration on the side. And then as sort of opportunities come up, it can be hard to sometimes say no. But on the flip side, I think that knowing when to sort of say, okay, well, let's slow things down a little bit. And I think that's that's kind of what's going to happen to me. I think after I'm over this stint of collaborations, I'm going to sort of, pull my foot off the throttle. And in a weird way, with everything that's going on in the world, it's allowed me to sort of, find a little bit more time that I wouldn't have otherwise to sort of, stay on top of things. And, I think, despite everything I said about, drowning things, I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And for as long as I'm still doing that, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Well, that's great. So for people who want to know more about you and check out your products, where should they go and what should they do?
Nice. So the best place is probably Twitter, and you can find me there at Whitby Writes. So WHITBY Writes, as in like to write things. I also have a website, which is just www.matt-whitby, spelled the same way, shockingly. And yeah, so those are the best places. So yeah, I sort of like post sort of tweets sometimes about my research and other times about my publications, with some weird interactions in the middle as Twitter is prone to do.
Excellent. That's awesome. Have you ever thought about creating a Twitter account called Whitby Writes, RIGHT, where it's just you picking up things that have fallen down and writing them? Just pictures of you, like a sign that's fallen down on the street, and you're, that kind
But then by that logic, I would then also have to create a Whitby Wrongs account, where I'm going through and I'm, for every good act I do, I have to balance it out. So there's, going around.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I can't get any more of a criminal record. So it's
excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining me today on Tabletop Babble. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you so much.
That was a great interview with Matthew. People, if you want to find and follow me online, head on over to @JamesIntricasso on Twitter and worldbuilderblog.com. Also, I just came out with a role-playing game. It's a science fantasy role-playing game with an original system that I designed with a great team of people, and it is exclusively for Roll20. That's right, the Roll20 virtual tabletop. It is the talk of the town. It's called Burn Bright, and you can find out more at burnbright.com. That's Bright, BRYTE. burnbright.com. Go check it out. And also, as you know, episode 200 of Tabletop Babble will be my last as its host. However, I would love to give the new hosts a chance to come in with a huge audience. So please spread the word about this show and head on over to Apple Podcasts, leave a 5-star rating, and you can help other people find the show. It means the world to me. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast network that was edited by Nate Pausenga. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding DSPN with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by BattleBards. Everybody go play some fun games.
Gather round, travelers, to hear our tale. Venture Maidens is an actual play 5th edition podcast made by 4 longtime friends and lifetime gamers. We take our role-playing as seriously as we keep our bulges tasteful. So if you're looking for an epic high fantasy tale spun by a killer cast, give us a shot. We publish new episodes every other week and live stream our game recordings on Twitch. Now get on out there and download Venture Maidens wherever podcasts are free. Hope to see you in the community, and don't forget to venture away.